Welcome to Disc Golf History and Legends, sponsored by Blue Power Disc Golf. And here is your host, Scott Stokely.
Hey everyone, so super excited. We are back this week. We had technical difficulties last week. I think we're going to switch to a format where we're not going to broadcast live. There's just too many technical hangups that keep happening. Not because of the people running this thing. SmashBoxxTV and Jonathan and Terry have been fantastic, but just the nature of internet connections and bandwidth and all these other words that I'll pretend I know exactly what they mean. I have no idea, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a live format. So we're not going to be doing any editing. Anything that's said is going to make it out there, but we're going to just pre-record. So a couple things before we bring on our guest. First off, I just got back from a trip on the Northwest. I took a month off. My company, Constant Contact, who is hiring sales reps right now. If anybody's looking for work in Colorado or Massachusetts, message me. But Constant Contact gave me a month leave of absence to run Blue Power events. And I got to go to do 2 events in Idaho, one in Washington, one in Oregon. The people of the Northwest are brilliant. They're awesome. And sorry, I get distracted easily. But we had all the special needs kids came out for the special needs part of the events, and we had Fox News came out and covered the event in Twin Falls. Thanks to all the great people in Twin Falls. I mean, anyways, enough about that. I am just totally distracted because one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is because I'm going to get to talk to old friends that I haven't seen in a while. And this is one of the oldest friends I have in the sport. But he is a legend in the sport. So the disc golf history and legends things applies to him. I'll start this by saying that if there was a Mount Rushmore of people who threw and played with minis, that would be stupid, right? No one's going to drive to South Dakota to see a big old carving in the side of a mountain of mini throwers. The other reason it's stupid is that there will only be one person on it. It's probably the greatest mini player in the history of minis is Gregg Hosfeld. Now, that isn't all that Gregg's done. He also happens to be the 1987 Pro Disc Golf World Champion. I was standing, 30 feet away from him when he won in sudden death on the Toronto Island course against Mike Sullivan. He was as far as I know, the first disc golfer to appear on national television. No, I'm sorry, Billy Bloom, I think, appeared on back in the 70s. Maybe there was more. Okay, he was the first disc golfer to appear on the David Letterman show. How about that? And we'll talk about that as well. And finally, I don't want to leave this out. He might be one of the most underrated freestylers ever. He was making his living traveling around the world doing stand-up comedy. And that took him away from a lot of the events and took him away from a lot of the scene, both disc golf and freestyle. But he actually was a world-class freestyler as well. So I hope he's not listening to this. He's going to get a fat head and it's going to be impossible to talk to. But I want to bring on one of my dearest friends and one of the funniest people I've ever met, Gregg Hosfeld. Gregg,
it's too late. I already have a fat head.
Oh, well, did you hear any of that?
Pretty much most of it.
Okay, well, then I take pretty much most of it back. You're average at everything. No, I'm just kidding. So, Gregg, this is, like I said, part of my goal, my ulterior motive for doing this is getting to talk to old friends I haven't talked to in a while, and you are one of my dearest friends from back when. And I think it's been about 17 years since we've got to actually hang out, right? It's been a long time.
Oh my God, yeah, it has been quite some time.
So this is, like I said, I'm doing this mostly for me, but I hope everyone enjoys it as well. So thanks for coming back. I know it was tricky last week, but I'm glad we got you here. So let's start at the beginning. You got into disc sports. Well, if you're an old timer, you got into Frisbee. How? When? How did this all start for you?
Okay, so I played Frisbee as a kid forever, but we played Frisbee football in the street a lot with all the neighbor kids. And one day, my next door neighbor, Gary Getman, who could go all the way through the alphabet and up to 10 in one belch, he came over and told me that the Florida State Frisbee champs were doing a demo at a local semi-pro football game. And, I got all bowed up like, well, let's go see how good these guys are. And we showed up, and it was the Watson brothers, Mark and Jeff Watson, and they just blew me away with their, amazing throws and their leaping catches and whatnot. So I made Gary stand outside the only gate through which the bros could leave, and made Gary throw Frisbee with me until they left. And they saw us throwing and invited us out to a practice, and I showed up on Sunday, and basically from there I followed him around for 4 years until I finally beat him.
That I know, and it's funny that you mentioned Jeff Watson, because he is someone, and I will get him on the show at some point, completely under the radar, that he was legendary for his time. I mean, many people considered him the best disc golfer in the world, and he won the world championship, so I guess that's fitting. At his era. But you mentioned earlier that there were two times? Oh.
Well, he won Rose Bowl also.
Oh, he did win one of the Rose Bowls. Okay. And then he won in 83?
3. Yep.
Huntsville,
okay. Correct. The second PDGA Worlds.
Gotcha. Okay. So you got into it. Now, what city in Florida were you in?
Well, I grew up in Sarasota, learned to freestyle on the beach, learned to play disc golf with the Watson Bros, but there weren't any courses in Sarasota. We only had like a wooden post course and trees. I had to go all the way across the state to Rockledge to get to a disc golf course. And I moved to Atlanta. I think I actually won Worlds when I was living in Atlanta, believe it or not. But because I know I've seen myself listed as from Georgia when I won.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if Georgia can actually claim that title.
Yeah,
but
I guess they probably will. Hey, I'm going to digress, and I'm going to do this a lot on this show, but I have an amazingly funny story for you about people in the South claiming titles. So you have probably seen this. I was out at Brom Springs, the disc golf course in Huntsville, Alabama, which of course we know very well. And I was there a couple years ago, and there was a big sign right at hole 1, a gigantic banner that says "World's First Disc Golf Course." At Brom, right? Exactly. We all know it's Oak Grove Park. Like that, there's no debating that. And I was shocked, right? So I'm running the event. The president of the club shows up, and I pulled him aside. I said, you know that's not true, right? And his exact words, he looks me in the eye with a straight face. He says, "Yeah, we know. We don't care."
Nice.
I literally had no rebuttal, because I was all set to argue with him how this wasn't, and he's like, "Yeah, we know." And anyways, I'm sorry, got off track.
History is written.
History written by the victors and the Alabamians. So you started playing. There were no permanent disc golf courses. When did you first get to play basket courses? I mean, you started in late 70s. There weren't courses back then.
I mean, literally, Rockledge was it, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 hours away. So if I wanted to hit baskets, by then I was on the road, and I was finding courses out there. I eventually, I think Alan Risley started the PDGA directory. And at the time, I think he was in Tallahassee. And so obviously it needed all the help it could get. So I kind of became the road researcher for the directory. And so I was hitting pole hole courses out there, when I was in between gigs and tournaments. And as you know, I think in 1994, when the directory came out, it claimed that it had somewhere in the neighborhood of 450 courses. And by then I had played about 400 of them. So I was somewhere in the upper 80 percentile. I'm just going to go ahead and say 87% because I like that number of courses played way back then. You know, now that would be almost an impossibility now that there's something in the neighborhood of 7,000 courses. I think the closest is like 1,500. Someone claimed 2,000, but he was pretty much full of it, I think.
Right. Well, so here's the funny thing. So this is for all the disc golfers out there that didn't grow up without the internet. The way you played disc golf courses back then, no internet, there was a little paper book, the Disc Golf Course Directory, which was probably the most valuable thing that each of us owned, was our course directory. And all it was just a Kinko's photocopied booklet with the names of the courses, you know, by state. And it was amazing because the courses were, well, one thing it was notorious for is that all the directions to the courses in the book were written by the people who submitted them. And they literally, there would be things in there like turn left at the giant pecan tree. Or some of them said that like they would actually say turn right at and it would give a business name that didn't exist the following year. Like that was a real thing.
There was, I mean, one of them said from the downtown 7-Eleven. And I thought, well, Sparky, if I knew where the downtown 7-Eleven was, I'd know where the course is. I mean, the whole point of directions is for people that don't know where everything is.
Yeah.
I actually wrote an article for Disc Golf World News. I wrote an article called Directions on How to Give Directions. Keep driving till you see Wacky Bob's Exploding Stuff and Salmon Jerky Emporium, and keep driving till you think to yourself, this can't be it. And there it is on the left. You know, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and what there was, I would say, honestly, at least a quarter or more of them would start off with the name of the road you were on. So it says from Elm Street, and it would say turn right at Main, but it would never tell you which direction you were heading on Main Street to start the directions.
Correct.
But without this book, like I said, this book was the most valuable thing we owned because at least you knew the name of the park. You could always ask directions from a gas station. But let's kind of back up before the directory. So when did you start playing tournaments? Because the directory came a pretty good amount of time after you.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first tournament was 76.
Wow.
I hitched a ride. Well, didn't hitch a ride. I didn't stick my thumb out, but I got a ride with, I believe, PJ Callender, who was Florida's regional director at the time, and that we basically went to UCF, University of Central Florida, and played a makeshift course. And we were just hitting things. They didn't have baskets yet.
Yeah.
So.
Do you recall any of the interesting targets? Like one of my favorite ones was there was a tournament where you had to land on top of a picnic table. That was the hole. Yeah. That was
we were hitting a lot of light posts, fire hydrants, trees. We did go through an underground tunnel that they have there for staff. I don't know how we got away with that, but it was all concrete, so we had 2 or 3 throws of, throwing discs in there and losing about a gram every time we threw it, because scraping it off the discs. This is back when it was nothing but whammos. Mm-hmm.
So you started playing tournaments in 76. Do you recall, were you good at first, or like when you first started playing tournaments, were you competitive?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, first of all, amateur didn't exist when I started playing. And so basically, if you paid, you're in. And then, there's the state champ. Go beat him. Okay. Which didn't go well for a few years, but, trial by fire. You get good by playing with people that are better than you. And Jeff was better than just about anybody at the time. So, and we also, his brother Mark was very good. And we also had two other guys in the Sarasota area that were very good overallers. Guy by the name of Blue Ronk. He went by Blue. And Quigley Wiley. His name's actually Craig. But those four guys were terrific overallers. So, to track those guys down and be competitive with them was... they were right up there with some of the top players on the planet. So I had my standard set pretty early.
Gotcha. So now you got to travel, like you mentioned this, later on, but you made a living for quite a while as a stand-up comedian, a road comic.
Well, yeah. I was a juggler, but I throw stuff.
Right.
Juggler, basically a comic that throws stuff, and not always in anger.
But you had something going for you that no one else at the time had, which was there wasn't enough money to travel and play Frisbee, but you could travel and make money, and while you were doing that, you could tie that into playing. So, you were competing all over the country. When did you first hit the road and actually get to start playing horses all over the country? And
I really hit the road in 83, 84. I had some runs at local theme parks for a while, from 79 through 83. I did SeaWorld. I did a medieval banquet hall for a while. Then I ended up at Circus World. And I remember winning the Florida State overall championships. I won freestyle golf and overall in 82. And then 83 and 84 was really my first big road trip. I did the National School Assemblies tour, starting, I think, in November of 83 and most of 84.
Okay,
so
was this before Dan Berman and Jack Cooksey did it?
I would think so.
Okay.
But I can't be sure. I don't know that Dan Berman and Jack Cooksey had done that. But
I think
when I got back in 84, my freestyle was really tight because I'd been playing in gyms, 3-4 shows a day for several months, and came back and won the Florida States in freestyle and golf again. And that's really when things started taking off as far as Frisbee stuff. But yeah, I had to do gigs on the road. That was the only way that I could afford to travel and do tournaments.
Sure.
I'd win an open division tournament. It was like a $15 entry fee, and you'd win the open division with 25, 30 people, and you're getting like $125.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were happy to get it back then.
Oh, yeah. Sure. That supplemented my income. I was doubling up on the fun and the money. I was making anywhere from 125 to $300 a night doing the gigs. But they were spaced out, few and far between, and you had to drive all over the place to get to them. So,
yeah. And I have to admire you too. The entire time I knew you, is it okay? Is it fair to say that that your car was a piece of shit? Is that okay to say? Remember that little white, what was it, a Rabbit?
Oh, well, the white one was an upgrade from the green one.
Oh, really?
I had a 77 Rabbit, and it was like an indescribable shade of green. I think it's like a 3-day-old guacamole, you know? I couldn't park it anywhere near a dip sign. Boom! Hey! But basically, I got rid of that, and then I got the white one in '87, and I got it with 51,000 miles, and when I sold it, somewhere in the around 2000. Oh God, not even then. I think it was 95 maybe, but I had 391,000 miles on that thing, and it was still running like great.
Okay, so I'm no longer going to call it a piece of shit. That's an amazing car. So I retract my adjective.
Yeah. Well, the green one was. You were just one car late. That's all.
Okay. So I want to jump ahead because you won Worlds in 1987, but I want to talk about leading up to Worlds and I'm going to have to pull this from my memory banks, but one of the things about you is I would consider you an underrated player. You know, I mean, for a world champion, you know, like you and I mean, there's something both of us have in common. When you watch people play, we don't pass the eyeball test. So when people see you, they weren't wowed by you, you know, the way they would, you know, Sam Ferens, for example, right?
Sure.
But you were by absolutely one of the best finesse players to ever play. We can say that safely, right?
I mean, I was a finesse player. I had what I called unbridled accuracy. I could throw as hard as I want, and I didn't lose accuracy. Another good thing is I could throw a 360 accurately. And, you know, I was a pretty decent putter. I had all the approaches, and, you know, I had maintained 3 or 4 different kinds of putting styles. I going into 87, I was the dark horse. Nice, huh? But yeah, it's most people, you know, wouldn't have given me the second thought, but Stork, you know, and his predictions put me in there. And I mean, still to this day, one of my favorite things about winning Worlds is just how many people around the world were saying my name like this. Hosfeld?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I mean, everyone who knew you were good, but like I said, you tend to be under the radar. One of the things about your travel is I know you would pop up at small tournaments out of the way that nobody expected, but then you would also miss some of the big ones because you were on the road. Right. So, and that happened. I know it happened more in freestyle, but it's like, I know that was the situation. Now, if I recall though, didn't you win the World's warm-ups that year, or something happened the week before that kind of set you up to have a good week? I'm pulling this from 25 years ago.
Well, okay. That was a good summer for me. I went to the U.S. Open. Actually, I went to Mid-America. So I got 11th in U.S. Open, 10th in Mid-America in Columbia, 8th in Fort Wayne, 7th in Cincinnati. And I thought to myself, all right, so I've got Indiana States and Ohio States to go. I'll probably get 4th and 3rd. Sammy and I will get 2nd in doubles at Worlds, and I'll win singles. Yeah, that's how it's going to go. Well, so that was my prediction. And in fact, I won Indiana States. Basically, I thought, oh no, I peaked too soon. Funny story there. I was traveling with Sammy, and he got me pretty loaded Saturday night. I had shot a 9 down on the shorts at Riverside in Hammond, Indiana, and he got me loaded Saturday night. And then Sunday I came back and I shot 11 under on the longs. Whoops! And anyway, the next week I got 2nd in the Ohio States. I tied with Slate Paul on his home course and beat him in the playoff for the hardware. And then, Sammy and I got won doubles, got 2nd in doubles, pardon me. And I ended up winning singles in a playoff.
Yeah. So before we
which-
talk about that playoff, there's some things that happened beforehand that I was privy to, which was you and Sam, and I think you credited Sam with introducing it to you, but you guys were working on a putting style that was new. You can't say you invented it, but I had never seen it before 87.
Yeah, it was the
describe
walk-up putt, the two-step putt. Sam, I want to say he showed it to me, but really I'd been doing it all along when I played speed golf. I was a big speed demon. I mean, I wasn't fast, but I loved to run, and I loved to play speed golf. And so I wouldn't run up to my disc, mark it, and putt. I would walk up, I'd step right up as soon as my foot hit behind my mini or behind my disc. I'd putt, bend over, pick it up. Conrad got really mad at me about that because he would mark his lie and he'd still, run times about as fast as me.
Right.
But yeah, the walk-up putt, just as soon as I found out that it was legal, I mean, my putting improved exponentially, and that really made all the difference.
Yeah, so this is the idea of the walk-up putt is that you take 2 steps to putt, but you don't fall past the putt.
Right. I did maintain my balance, and I was a freestyler, juggler, a disc golfer. I mean, I did a lot of physical things, so I was really in tune with my body. So I could do a walk up and not step on my mini. I could do a 360 and not step on my mini. Now I can't. Since I don't want to jump too far ahead, but had major surgery in March, and I'm a spaz now.
Hey, it was fun while it lasted. So okay,
yeah,
so
right?
now we're at 87 Worlds.
Okay.
To set the stage, we're on Toronto Island, and one of the best things about this tournament is that everybody had to get on a ferry to go out to the island
Yes.
in the morning. And if you missed that, and if you took that ferry, you'd get out there on the side of the island where the course was with about an hour to warm up. Perfect. If you missed that ferry, you had to wait half an hour to take the ferry to the opposite end of the island, which arrived about 5 minutes before tee time, about a half mile from the course. And so every single day, a handful of players would miss the first ferry, and disc golfers, especially back then, were not in the best shape. So they were running with their cigarettes, but they would get out to the course all sweating and dying. But anyways, so we get out to the island. How did the week go? I was more paying attention to my poor play. Like, were you in contention all week, or tell me?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a blur, but I do recall just being pretty comfortable with my game. I don't think I ever was one of those guys that had to sprint to make the round. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty comfortable. I mean, I there's no question about it that my putting peaked that week. There was no question. I believe I was the best putter at that tournament. I think I missed one putt inside of 40 pretty much the entire week. And that was because I had an odd stance. But I mean, I was regularly hitting 80s and 90s and that kind of thing. So my driving, I actually have a video that Dave Griffin, Big Daddy, shot.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, when I look back at my driving form, it was hideous. I mean, literally hideous. I mean, I was doing some skipping hitch step, and it was awful. I've changed my form 3 times since winning Worlds, and I was a far better driver when I was 52 than when I won Worlds. But I wasn't. I was a better putter in '87 than any time thereafter, I think.
Gotcha. And so the main competition for you was Mike Sullivan, who one of the owners of Prodigy Discs now, and a great friend of mine, ours, who was, well, at the time was absolutely the best player from Canada, probably the best player to ever come out of Canada, fair to say. I mean, Glenn Whitlock, you know.
That's fair to say, yeah.
I mean, well, actually, I don't want to say that. I would say that along with Glenn Whitlock and a couple other players.
Well, yeah, Glenn, great player also. So, yeah.
But
certainly Eastern Canada.
Eastern Canada. And he basically, well, he was from Toronto, and that was his home course. So the top player.
I think he had a place on the island.
I believe that is the case too. So he actually was on the island playing and was great. So going into the last round, that's where I picked up because I had finished and we were watching the finals, right? So going into the finals with 2 holes to go, where were you guys? Because that's the most memorable part, those final 2 holes of the final round.
Well, I believe we were tied, and or I might have even had him by 1. Something tells me I didn't make my putt on 17. That might have been the only putt I'd missed. I don't have that on video. My video starts from 18, but
I don't want to just correct you, but I think I'm pretty confident that you made your putts on 17 and 18.
I did definitely make it on 18.
For sure.
Mike took a big backdoor approach around everything and put it 6 feet behind the basket, and I left mine 40 feet short. And I remember Andy Fankhauser going, woo, you know, and they're like, yeah, my buddy's going to win, you know, and I got pissed. and he kind of pissed me off so bad that I drained the 45-footer to stay tied.
With the walk-up putt.
With the walk-up putt.
And the disc the disc also became famous, which was the...
Oh yeah, it was a shuttle puppy. Well, actually, that in itself is a misnomer. I believe the shuttle puppy itself was actually a DGA disc, but it had the shuttle on it. It was the '83 PDGA Worlds Tournament issue disc that was given to me by Vanessa Chambers, who was, I believe, she won in '86 and '87. I could be wrong there. But she was a 2-time world champ, and she handed me this putter, and I switched like about a month before Worlds, and boy, I was really able to narrow it down with that disc.
Gotcha. So hole 18, Mike Sullivan Park said, you're 40 feet short. You nailed the 40-footer to push a sudden death playoff.
Correct.
And you guys went
right back to hole 1 and started the playoff. And we both hit like 20, 25 footers on 1. I skimmed one over on number 2, and he's parking these things, right? And then number 3 was a pretty long hole. It was like a par 4, I guess. It was maybe 500 feet. Which at the time, our fastest disc was like an XD or something. And, we really didn't have fast discs then. But I believe I chose the wrong disc. And on the 3rd hole of the playoff, I flipped one over OB. And I thought, well, that's it. And so Mike's second shot hit a tree and he fell 100 feet short. And he was able to lay it up under the basket for an easy drop-in 4. Just bink. And my second shot turned over again. It looked like it was going to go OB again. And at the last minute, it came back in about 40 feet past the basket in a small ditch behind a tree. And I hit that for a circle 4 to stay tied again. And, people are starting to go nuts because I just hit 2 pretty good putts to stay tied for the lead. And then the 4th hole was a real short hyzer dump. And he landed about 15 feet short of the basket, and I landed about 12 feet left of the basket. And his putt, Mike had a real lift putt that he used. And I've never seen this happen before or since. The baskets themselves, if you may recall, had heavier than normal chain. They weren't DGA. I don't know what, where the chain came from or, who made the baskets, but they were a little heavier than normal. His putt hit center high, rolled out, caught a nub on the outside of the basket, flipped up, and teetered on the back of the basket and then dropped out. And, I'd never seen that before, but I did my walk-up putt from 12 feet and sunk that, and that was it.
That's history. Yeah, I mean, I was right next to you when that happened. I didn't know you well at the time, but yeah, I mean, it was a memorable part of my childhood. I was only 18 years old at the time, so
yeah. So, and I do remember hanging out with you a little bit in practice, doing some putting. And I do remember that was really about the time where you really started getting cleaned up too, I think, where you really made a big turnaround, and I was really very proud of you for that. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was a punk kid, to say the least. I'm going to interview myself someday. It's a lot of things about my life were funny 30 years ago. So we're going to I'm going to have to jump ahead because I just for time reasons, I just want you to tell me the story. So you were the first professional Frisbee player to appear on the David Letterman show.
Yeah. Well, I did Stupid Human Tricks. So basically, after, it was at the 85 Worlds in Tulsa.
This is before. I thought it was
Bud Light Frisbee team came to the players' party and did an awesome freestyle demo. And after they stepped off, I figured, well, we got a crowd. Why not? So I stepped out and I started doing some juggling stuff. And I went through 3 balls, 4 balls, maybe 5 balls, did some cigar box juggling. And then I broke out a mini and I started doing air brushes and I did breath tips. And I had a really good one that day. I did 29 breath tips and somebody got it on video. So I asked him to give me a copy of the video. And as soon as I got a copy of it, I made a copy of that. So, how several generations of VHS copied. So by the time I sent the copy to Letterman, it was horrible, grainy, terrible. But they got the video and they went, "Hey, that's stupid. Come on up." So the week that they called me, I was working the Punchline in Atlanta, which is the hottest comedy club in the Southeast. And the club owner, his name was Ron D'Annunzio. I don't know if you're familiar with the actor Dennis Farina, but he always played a lieutenant sergeant or a mafioso guy, right? Okay. Well, that was Ron D'Annunzio. Okay. He would look just like that. Had similar demeanor. So I asked Ron, I said, "Hey, Ron, do you mind if I go up and do Letterman this week?" And it's the only time he ever laughed at anything I ever said. This is a comedy club owner. So I was like, "No, that actually is happening if you let me go." So he gave me the night off. He said, "Yeah, just try to give us a plug." And I booked a flight and went up on, I believe it was a Thursday. And I flew up and they were going to bump me, actually. I wasn't nailing the trick in the green room. I just, I was getting 5, 6, 7 breath tips. But they decided to go ahead and put me on, and I nailed it. I mean, I had one misfire, And then I set it up again, and I did the best I've ever done it in my entire life. I did 40 breath tips. It's breath tips, not blow tips. And I got it on the show. I got it on the air. And that was a really cool part too, is like, if you look at the video, you have my mouth, the mini disc, and then right in between behind me, it had a sign that said on air. So that was
nice.
really cool. So the really cool thing is, after I did the show, I took a cab to the bus station, a bus to the airport, flew back to Atlanta, docked at 11:50. This is when the show was on NBC at 12:30. I drove for 35 miles. I ran actually to my car and was 3/4 of the way out of the airport by midnight. I drove 35 miles in a half an hour, set up my video camera or my video machine, and got it on tape as it aired that night. But so that was a really great experience. It was very cool.
Well, the funny thing about it was, because I watched it, right, and one of the things that that happened, and so first off, the idea of the breath tip. Let me explain that you spin the mini. You give it a spin in the air, and below it, you blow it. And every time you blow it, it keeps it aloft. So you're balancing it on multiple breaths. And so, when you did this, I know you misfired the first time, and it didn't look like Dave was going to let you do the second one, but you just kind of did it, right? And then you did it, and then as soon as you did it, you looked at Dave and you said to him, "I think that's a world record." And Dave,
he sort of ignored that and just moved on.
Yeah, because people didn't know. People didn't back in that era didn't even know people played Frisbee seriously,
right?
Let alone so you set a world record on national TV. Dave was unimpressed, but no, that was brilliant. So I want to jump. We don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to talk to you about courses, and I want to give you a chance to plug, because you do course design. And this is a course design from someone who has as much experience as anybody in the world at playing courses. When you were traveling, you wrote a column, I believe, called Front Nine, Back Nine, right? Where you reviewed
the front and back nine, yes.
Yeah, like you reviewed good courses and bad courses. And I want to get your take, because technology's changed. The athletes are better. Like, there's so many different things, but fundamentally, what made a good course back then hasn't changed, I don't believe. And
well, fun, fair, and safe. You can't go wrong there. But there was a lot of things that people had to learn. People were putting baskets right next to roads or behind a baseball backstop, and that kind of thing. And it's just a lot of it was just luck. They put courses in where you'd almost have to throw a disc sideways to get it through the trees. And I was doing a lot of writing. I wrote for Disc Golf World News for like 20 years. And so I wrote several different versions of the Front and Back Nine, the Front Nine being courses that I thought were good, really good, and the Back Nine being courses that weren't. In one case, I said this course design may be the first one to actually make me feel as if it warranted therapy. It was just, there were some really bad ones out there. But I feel like playing all the bad courses and all the good courses, I learned just as much from both. Knowing what not to do is just as important as what to do when you're designing and building courses. And, I think I go about it a little differently than a lot of people. Like, Chuck has theorems and he can quantify anything. And I really don't go that route. I get into some woods, and I just look for naturals, and I try to set them up so that it's striking visually, and it's fair above all. and safe. And if you can get those three factors in, I really feel like you really can't go wrong. The hardest part is par fours and fives, and just making sure they play to par properly.
So, and these are going to be two different categories possibly, but like, what were your favorite courses from the early days? And I want to ask you, are the courses that you feel the best courses, are those some of the newer courses? Because a lot of my favorites from back in the 80s that were the best in the world at the time, they don't hold up in my opinion, to some of the modern courses. But so what were your favorite courses back in the day?
Well, I mean, you can't hardly beat Boylan Family Farms. That was just such an amazing property. And what really blows me away is that course did, I think, hold up well into the advance of technology, considering that it was designed with a couple of lids by a couple of guys that weren't really great players. Bill Boylan and his brother, as far as I know, I never really saw them play, but they really didn't even compete. But they came up with, I think, an astounding course. And I feel like even playing it today would still hold up, but I think that's a rarity because it is a mountain course. But yeah, courses nowadays, I mean, my God, I mean, the top players now are just so far and away better overall players. They're throwing average, 25% farther than people just 15, 20 years ago, even before my time. I mean, frankly, even after I won Worlds, I wasn't throwing that far. And it was almost kind of embarrassing sometimes to tell people I'm a world champ. And then you get out there and you're throwing lids like 230,
But in fairness, though, and this is I kind of was a different type of player, but for the most part, the top players back then developed their games for the courses they were playing.
That's true. I remember very specifically once talking to you in Chilai at 99 Worlds, and you said that the Chilai course was a putter's course. And I said, yeah, if you can drive 450, it's a putter's course. I couldn't throw that far. You tore up that course, but you had so much more distance than me, So
yeah, no, there's no doubt, and it's funny. I will never be the old person that says back in my day, because there's no doubt the players are, they're superior to back then. But I will say this, that no players today could compete on the finesse game as the finesse players back in the day, because they're developing their games differently. I mean, the Jeff Lissamans and the Dr. Rick Vokes and the Stan McDaniels and the their games were developed for 250-foot woods holes, and it's a different game.
Yeah.
So were you going to say something similar?
Oh no! I mean that was my genre. That was my crowd. I mean, those were the people that I would really go head to head with. And I was lucky to come out ahead every once in a while, but more often than not, it was going to be Stan or Dr. Rick or the Lissamans. But they were really they could hit a line incredibly well, and you don't see that kind of finesse required these days.
Exactly.
I do see a fair amount of finesse demonstrated, but I think also course design in the earlier days. We weren't allowed to cut as many trees. We didn't have the credibility in order to, convince parks departments, hey, fairway is a compound word, fair and way, so, the game itself has changed quite a bit. I mean, the fairways are, I would say, a good 50% longer on the average. And it's evolving. It has to, it had to. And I like the direction it's going,
Yeah.
but I would like to see some of that finesse game come back. On a side note, I have a new course in Claremont, Florida. I believe it's the longest course in Florida right now. Long to longs, it's a little over 9,000 feet, par 65. But I showed up at a handicap and we played short to shorts. And I had no illusions. I figured I'm just going to show up and donate. Okay. I mean, I just want to play with my local homies. The club formed around one of the courses that I designed. And, so I kind of have a little maternal, paternal, whatever feel for this club. So I basically showed up. I ended up shooting a 16 under. And this is like a week and a half ago. I had no idea that was going to happen, but it was short to short, and it was just fun to not have to kill myself to get off the tee, get a really big bomb off the tee. It was just nice and relaxed, and it was really fun, but fully realizing, of course, that those tees weren't designed for my game, although they were designed by me.
Yeah. I love it.
But
so we are going to wrap it up. I made a promise to myself that I would keep these to an hour because I would love to talk all night with everybody, but I don't want to set a precedent. Before we do anything, before we leave, this is your business. You design courses. How can people get a hold of you? And give yourself a plug. When they get a hold of you, what are you going to do for them? Why would they hire you? Because you're one of the best course designers in the world. Sell yourself.
Well, boy, that's always fun. Basically, I make sure that, first of all, I don't charge by the day. I charge by the hole, which means I take as much time as I need to design a course that flows well, that plays well, that caters to the demographic for which it's designed. Lately, I've been doing a lot of dual tee, dual basket courses. So I came up with something like 13 reasons why it's better to have dual baskets. One of which is that with two baskets, you can pander to the newbie by putting your shorter basket a little shorter. And you can also cater to a higher level player by making the longer basket more challenging. And if it's not suitable for somebody of a lesser skill level, they have another option that they can play. So I try to make all four options eminently viable and fun and fair, and to play to four different levels. And, I just have all those courses in my background. I've played 1,200 plus courses, and I really feel like I understand what works and what doesn't. And, for the last 4 years, out of 140 courses in Florida, my 3 18-holers were all in the top 4 on Disc Golf Course Review. And of course, I've never given one of my courses a 5. So, I don't tell people what to vote when they rate these courses. So I really feel like that's a fairly decent indicator of the kind of work that I do. Okay. So I want to give you a quick plug then, and I'm going to plug you by just reiterating what you just said. There's 140 courses in Florida. You designed 4 of them, and 3 of your courses are in the top 4 on Disc Golf Course Review. So 3 of your 4 courses are in the top 4 on Disc Golf Course Review of the 140. That I can't say anything about you that doesn't make a better case for, as far as a course designer. Yeah. And I will say that Dan Berman's course just slid into the top. Actually, I think it slid in. It debuted at number 2 I did consult on that with him, but I wouldn't say enough to claim, that. I mean, it was mostly Dan's work. But like Dan said, disc golf course design is where all disc golfers go to stay relevant.
Hey, wink, wink, John Houck.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really take it seriously. In fact, right now, I'm working on 8 different courses, and 5 of which are going to be in Lake County, Florida, which is just a bit northwest of Orlando. And it's called the Lake County Disc Golf Trail. We'll have 5 new courses and an upgrade this year.
Okay. Well, fantastic. So how does somebody who needs a course designed or needs a course designer, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach me at the World Champion Disc Golf Design Facebook page, or you can use the acronym there, wcdgd.com. Or actually it's Haas at wcdgd.com is my email. And we can get you a phone number too. I don't know if that's a good thing to put that out over the waves, but
yeah. Well, they can always get a hold of you through Facebook or, I mean, it's not hard to find.
Yeah, I mean,
it's easier than it used to be.
Yeah, I think you can probably even reach me through the PDGA, that way. You can reach me through the player. My PDGA number is 1602, and you can, find my profile, and, they have ways to send me an email there too. So it's 1602. Everybody thinks it says 16 ounces. The one guy that doesn't drink on the course. Why does it say 16 ounces?
That's actually really funny.
But anyway, yeah, I love designing courses, and I really feel like I'm having a good year this year, building a bunch of new ones in Lake County, and just got Avery out on the Champions Point course in Claremont, and that's my newest course, and we've got several more coming in right behind it online. So real excited to get these things up and playable, and we'll be bidding for World or a major anyway in 2020 or 2021 probably. So awesome. By the way,
I love it.
Like my hat, my Frisbee detector hat.
I did not see that, but now I have.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
Gregg, it is absolutely amazing to talk to you. I'm so glad you're doing well. I know you had a little bit of a health scare recently, but I know you're also doing better. And so that shouldn't discourage anybody from hiring you because you're fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, well, I mean, back in March, I had an aortic dissection, and basically I was dead for 35 minutes while they cleaned me all up. It was induced, but yep, I died, didn't take. But yeah, to say I'm lucky to be alive is like saying the Pacific is moist. So I'm really very lucky to be here, and exceptionally grateful to be here, and exceptionally grateful to my Frisbee family, which really, and I cannot emphasize this enough, how people stepped up and offered support both online and financially and every other way you can imagine. So thank you, Frisbee family. You guys really have been astounding, and I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, Gregg, everyone who knows you loves you too. I've never heard in my entire Frisbee career, I have not heard a bad word about you from anybody. Doesn't mean it hasn't been spoken, but it has not been spoken within earshot of me.
On a few.
What?
I can fill you in on a few for sure, but I'll take your word for it.
I am telling an absolute fact that I have not heard a bad word about you. That is the truth. So
well, it's good that you're hard of hearing, I guess.
It is good. Hey, ignorance is bliss. I love you to death, Gregg. I'm glad you're doing well, and thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's been a technical challenge, but we are going to push this out. We will push this out on Well, we'll send you the links and everything so we can put it up on your page. This is not being viewed live. So we will probably, I'll talk to Jonathan, but I'm thinking tomorrow we'll probably have this up, and then we'll post it and share it. And hopefully we can, we'll get you a little bit of business, because you are one of the best at what you do. And other than that, I love you. I'm great to talk to you. And thank you so much.
All right, Scott. Thank you, man. I really appreciate your thinking of me and including me in on all of this. Love the game, and just like I told Billy Crump a long time ago. He was asking me about my Hall of Fame induction, and I told him, look, man, I am not going to stop promoting the game, competing, designing courses, helping with work days until I get inducted again. Is that pompous? I can never tell.
I don't know. No, why not? I love it, man. Cool. Thank you so much, Greg. We will talk to you. Our paths will cross again.
Sounds great, Scott. I look forward to seeing you out there, buddy. Thank you so much.
You bet, man. Thank you.